Welcome to the Reboot Chronicles, connecting you to the world's top leaders and CEOs rebooting their organizations and themselves with revealing stories to help you prosper in unprecedented times. I'm your host, Dean DeBias, and as a serial CEO who's led dozens of companies that created thousands of jobs and billions in revenue, my passion is uncovering powerful lessons that can inspire you to reboot your organization, your career, and your life. Listen and subscribe wherever you get podcasts or at rebootchronicles.com. I'd like to welcome Wayne Levings to the Reboot Chronicles Show. He is a CEO, Chief Client Officer, and Executive Committee member at Kantar, the world's leading marketing data and analytics company. Operating in about 100 countries with about 25,000 employees, the $3.5 billion company serves the world's largest advertisers with AI and human-driven insights that help brands target their global growth. Bit of history here for me, as I used to be part of this great company. In a move to extract value, or more value, I should say, out of WPP's massive portfolio of assets, WPP spun out Kantar, basically out of the mothership, and now it's co-owned by them as well as Bain Capital, so very different company years later. Another Kantar group called TNS Media, where I was CEO and WPP acquired that company, now it's called Kantar Media, is in the process of being spun out to a private equity group, Hig Capital, for about $1 billion. Wayne, good to see you. Lots going on there.
Yes, great to see you, Dean, and great to be on the podcast. Yes, lots going on.
Yeah, I don't know how you keep up with it, but you guys have been through so much, we'll just say in the last 10, 15 years. And I have to tell you, actually, I mentioned Sir Martin Sorrell, I should say.
Yeah.
He was actually the first guest on this program.
Oh, wow.
Over
Fantastic.
10 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe we'll juxtapose and repost his and yours together. Yeah, it was a very frank conversation that we had. And at the time, he was my boss's boss. So it was fun. I always enjoyed hanging out with him and going on joint sales calls in New York, where you are. And he was the bad cop. I was the good cop. But I always liked the sales or whatever, the client-focused culture of both WPP and Kantar, and now Kantar.
Yep.
But yeah, what's it been like for you? This whole transformation it must have been challenging.
It's been a fantastic journey in many ways, but a challenging journey as well. And as you talk about Martin, I mean, Martin's a remarkable character who did an incredible job leading WPP, and now is obviously in his own business in S4. But actually, Dean, interestingly, I think the big transformation started to happen in Kantar from the acquisition of TNS, over 15 years ago. I think that was a catalyst that has then led to, honestly, ongoing transformation in the business over that time period, both in how we began to integrate what was a legacy Kantar business with the TNS business and all the different pieces around that. The media part of it, which you led, was a very big and important part of that business, alongside World Panel and then all the custom sides of the business. And then over the last 5 or 6 years, obviously, we've had quite a different focus as we've gone under private equity ownership with Bain Capital as our majority shareholder. WPP is still an important minority shareholder of the business as well, but significant transformation, again, particularly over the last 5 years, as we've looked to really sharpen up the portfolio, focus on a couple of key areas. As you mentioned, actually, our Kantar Media business, which has been a very successful business, we agreed to a sale to Hig Capital at the back end of last year. That should be completed shortly. And I think that gives that business an opportunity to sort of thrive on its own as well. But yeah, there's been lots of transformation.
Yeah, I'm hearkening back to the original. I called it an acquisition, but actually, Martin Sorrell actually was a hostile takeover of TNS because someone else was trying to buy us.
That's correct.
And the one thing I remember is he came into my office, beautiful big office on Park Avenue. You could play football in my corner office. I was the guy large and in charge, and he's like, "This should be my office." I'm like, "You can have it."
That sounds like Martin.
It was a little too stuffy for me. A lot of wood paneling, and I think they ended up making that the WPP headquarters eventually.
They did, and as you say, we've probably about 5 years ago, ourselves and WPP moved down now to World Trade. We're down in 3 World Trade after we left the Park Avenue offices.
Yeah, we usually don't do much location stuff, but what's it like working in the World Trade Center, the new one, That's where the Twin Towers were, right?
Correct,
That's the new building. Yep.
correct. And we're number 3, which is the second tallest building. Number 1 is obviously the Freedom Tower, and we're in number 3.
Okay.
Yeah, the buildings are fantastic buildings. They're a great place to work. And this area of downtown New York, for those who know the area well, will know there's been absolute transformation. It's been transformed, after the aftermath of 9/11, and is a very vibrant part of New York City these days.
Yeah, bit of a renaissance. A lot of people didn't used to like going down there. Now it's a happening place.
Good.
So back to the challenges. For you, and your people, what have been the biggest challenges since, quite frankly, just going private is what you've really done?
Yeah, I mean, at the heart of the business, I think ownership is one thing, which is obviously a very important thing, and I'll talk through specifically how I think that has driven some challenges and I think honestly some real advantages. I think actually the ownership with Bain Capital has been a very good move for Kantar. But more broadly, I think the challenges facing a business like ours is two things. One is making sure that we continue to really be able to understand and follow, let's call it the consumer or the person. That we are researching, measuring, understanding, etc., and how we continue to make that relevant for our clients, who, in the most part, typically are either large advertisers or large publishers. And as you would well know, the way people, consumers, consume media, buy solutions, buy products and services, everything that they do is rapidly changing all the time. There's so many, from what it used to be TV to now just multiple channels of media, to the way you would buy, to all of those things. So understanding that behavior, understanding people's attitudes, etc., I think in many ways is the biggest challenge that we face. So it's how do you continue to follow the individual, the person, the community, the people, and then make your offer relevant to our clients. And I think making sure that you can follow that, innovate behind it, use technology to be able to be successful in being able to achieve that. The role of technology has become critically important to our business, whether that be in being able to understand new data sources, being able to put automation into our business, being able to obviously more recently focus heavily on AI. That I think is at the heart of the challenge. I think at a separate, probably from an ownership structure, where I think actually what has been really helpful from the change of ownership to private is it's given us space to invest in the business. I think as we got towards 5 or 6 years ago, before we went this way, the need to invest, particularly in technology, became absolutely critical to the business. And I think under Bain Capital, we've been able to do that. We've been able to invest in appropriate areas around our products and solutions and make ourselves more relevant and more future-proof for the business.
Yeah, the management team chose wisely with Bain. I mean, they're a big dog, adults in the room, treating you like a public company, because you probably will be again. But having that patience and be able to invest and not have to you probably still do calls, but you don't have to do the, earnings per share every day and watching the stock. But so what's going on in the industry? I mean, for those that maybe don't know, is like, there's a lot of what Kantar does is research and monitoring, and everything we do out there. They just know where we are. They know what we do. Everything from online to TV to movie theaters to you name it. Just people moving around. And this is advertisers need to use this. You have the top 100 advertisers, and you personally probably have called on almost all of them yourself, I bet. But at the same time, there's this surge over probably more than really should be going on of AI-enabled technologies, and a lot of people in these accounts saying, hey, we can do the same thing. It's really simple. We run these little algorithms. And then I look back at you guys and I go, well, I don't know. Kantar has so much historical data that they can run their own language models and really come up with better insights than some of these other, brand new companies can. So I guess the question in here is, competitively, you used to be up against a couple big dogs. Now it seems like the competitive market is just attacking traditional. So how's that going?
No, it's a great point. I mean, I think I'd say a couple of things around that. Number one is I think the competitive landscape has exploded. And it's gone from being, in many cases, let's call it, we'd compete against more traditional sort of research and data businesses, Now we're competing against consultancy businesses, analytics businesses, media businesses, and even our clients themselves who continue to have used technology to insource what they believe they could do. And that's obviously had a big impact on particularly some of the agency businesses. You've seen that on media and creative in particular, as clients have looked to bring some of that stuff in-house. I think we have a couple of sort of fundamental competitive advantages in that area. One is, we would call it, and the way we refer to it is what we call expertise amplified by technology. So at the end of the day, our clients really are looking for people who really understand certain things. So do you understand advertising? Do you really understand what makes great advertising and how you bring that to life? Do you really understand how to build brands, which is a key part of our business? Do you understand what are the drivers of equity? Do you generally understand, humans and how they behave and the difference between what they say and what they do?
Or don't behave, right?
Or don't behave, yeah. And we call it that sort of that say-do action gap. There's a significant difference between what people say and how they behave. So we have over years have a genuine expertise in that area, and the process now is how do we bring that to life through technology, particularly AI, to scale it, bring it more quickly, automate it to our clients. The second key thing is you mentioned the large language models. Our fundamental belief, and certainly I think for our clients believe in this as well, is that you need to train AI large language models on genuine human or consumer data. So you need to at least have a basis of that human or consumer data. Otherwise, honestly, you're making stuff up slightly. And just using social media data, as we all know, is heavily skewed and biased. So we have huge normative databases, obviously billions of data points that we've built up over the years. And that is what we are using to train our large language models to be able to then to better answer clients' questions. So we see a future world of both being able to continue to really get genuine human data, plus alongside what's now called, funny enough, synthetic data. So essentially data that is now using that core data, but extrapolating it to be able to drive answers for clients. So again, I think it's for us, while it is a very competitive environment, we think we have some fundamental sort of key pillars of strength which allow us to be successful.
Yeah, and having talked with and advised some of your whippersnapper AI, I won't even call them competitors, but they think they are, and it's actually decent data. But what you bring to the table, your industry really is people that are actually analyzing and understanding and trying to help these brands figure it out, which I think is a huge gap. Most CMOs are lost in the AI world, and the research world, as you used to call it, is kind of transforming around them. So when you look at AI tech knowledge, just embedding technology in your own company, you're probably a vendor of various big dog companies that are, just provide it, and you're really just, using it for your own. But what about, making moves and actually acquiring some of these, especially some of the small ones? There's going to be a lot of opportunities there where you actually own more proprietary tools and sets, and more, automating your core business along the way, and being a little bit more of a tech company. Does that make any sense?
Yes, it does. And so two things. One is we're looking at both. So we have made some acquisitions over the past few years. So we bought a business in Denmark called Hamilton AI, which is all around sort of doing media ROI analytics using AI technology and platforms. And we continue to make those type of acquisitions. And as you can imagine, we're looking at the marketplace all the time. In fact, in the last few weeks, I've met with some very interesting companies I think are doing some very interesting stuff in this area. So that remains a key focus area, and acquisitions are always an important part of our strategy. But we're also building. So we formed a strong partnership with Microsoft last year. So we have Microsoft as a sort of a key sort of AI partner. They are working with us in a number of areas, but in particular around one, equipping our own team. So a big focus is when you've got 25,000 people around the world in a knowledge-based business like ours, how people use AI themselves can make a big difference. So we can get those 25,000 people really adopting AI tools, from simple things like Copilot to, what we do. I mean, you can imagine still a lot of work is still delivered via PowerPoint. So how do we move people onto more on platforms using different technologies, etc.? You can really drive both effectiveness and efficiency in the teams, release time to be able to spend more time with clients. So So using it to equip ourselves and make our teams using AI to be smart is a big focus for us, particularly, as I say, in a knowledge-based business. And then we're also using it to really, in many ways, you think about the value chain of research from the time you collect the data, whether it be through a survey or whether you using third-party data, whatever it is. But from the time you start the questionnaire to the time ultimately that you deliver a insight or a recommendation or something to a client, that sort of value chain of data collection, processing, understanding, analyzing, etc., we're applying AI to all levels of that, and that we can start to see having huge impact on our own business, but also on being able to deliver better insights to clients. And then finally, in building new products and solutions, I'll give you a good example. We are the world's leader in essentially measuring advertising. So if you see advertising on social media, or if you see it on TV, how effective is an advert? How does it cut through? Does it really resonate with consumers, both in terms of building your brand and building sales? And we have a product which we've built for years, which we call Link, which really helps advertisers and CMOs understand how effective their advertising is. It's obviously the bane of creative agencies because they don't like their creative to be measured. But that's the business we're in. But it's very well regarded by our clients. That we now do a lot of that through AI. So we have a big norms database, over 300,000 pieces of copy that we've tested over the years. We can now literally, on the basis of that, be able to test thousands of pieces of copy in instantaneously time using AI to basically say what is a good ad or not a good ad. So we're really applying it in our products and solutions today.
Yeah, it sounds like you're equipping your teams with partnerships, tools, and acquiring some as well. I think more acquisitions, the better. You're transforming your core business. Probably going to bring your headcount down because it's so automated now. And then you're changing the offers to the marketplace or whatever, creating new opportunities and growth for you guys, but as well as your customers. Otherwise, they're going to go somewhere else. So seems like a good strategy. What you came out with this thing called Blueprint for Brand Growth. What was that? I think there was a Wall Street Journal article about it or something. What was that all about?
Yeah, it's based on what our belief and our philosophy is about how brands grow. So we've been in this business for decades, and we have advised our clients on what do we think are the drivers of brand growth. What are the things? How do you predispose more people to your brand? How do you get them to be able to spend more on your brand? What really underlines sort of brand equity? And on that, we have a set of IP that we've developed over years, but also huge empirical databases, billions and billions of data points around, actually, if you do this, do that, these are the things which ultimately allow brands to grow. So the blueprint actually was a consolidation of that and really putting our point of view out into the marketplace to say, this is a Kantar's point of view about basically how brands grow. And this is a blueprint for brand growth. And it's underpinned by an IP we have, which we call MDS, which stands for meaningful, different, and salient. So how meaningful is your brand? How different is it? And what level of salience it has? And we know that ultimately is a driver of brand growth and a driver of brand equity. So we've, as I say, in many ways, it's a culmination of our expertise linked with all the, as I say, underpinned by empirical data. And we've been using that to spend time with our clients, talk them through our philosophy. Many of them are genuinely excited about it. Many of them adopt many of the principles within the blueprint, as you would expect. So these are sophisticated brand building organizations, so they know what they're doing. But this puts many much more empirical evidence against it. So is
that rating or index kind of like a glass door, where it's opinions of?
It's both based on attitudinal data, billions of data, and behavioral data. So we obviously have both in our business. Yeah. So we have both attitudinal and behavioral data. So we can link
what they say and what they do.
What they say, and what they can do. And we think that gives you a very strong piece. As I say, some of it's some of it's what you'd expect. You grow your brands by what we call predisposing more people towards your brand. So the more people that know about your brand, your ability to then grow your brand is much stronger. For example, so things that but the more you can put science against it, and that's what we've done is we put science against it. We think it's a very powerful tool for our clients.
There's been a couple big brands that have kind of imploded on the liftoff platform. Jaguar came out with ads that were just, no one knew what it was. The Bud Light thing was probably over politicized, but still, yeah. I mean, are there still failures out there because they're not listening to you or getting data, or is it just you can't stop the creative process too much? You can only guide them so much, or what's the magic sauce to not wasting your money, I guess, isn't it? So I'm asking this for a CMO friend.
Yeah, it's a great question. Listen, I think I think all businesses, marketing, as you know, is a bit of science and gut. We still believe that there's a bit, sometimes
Well
some of
said.
some of the most effective, whether campaigns or brands, are also built on a bit of both. So we believe we provide expertise and insights around both those areas, but clearly we're in the science space of it in terms of really understanding what people think. And there are, and some of those examples you mentioned, we know well. Sometimes they've gone ahead and done things at certain parts of the organization. They've gone contrary to what the data might say, and I'm not talking about specifically about those two, but in certain organizations, and sometimes it works. Dean, sometimes it doesn't work. Our general view is that the more data-based you are, and the better you understand your consumers and the people who are buying your products or consuming your products or services, the better choices you will make. And without a doubt, the industry has become more data-based over the last 10 years.
Yeah, that's why I asked. How can you help CMOs not learn from their failures, but other failures? It's like everyone just wants to learn from the successes. Oh, hey, McDonald's did that ad, and woo! It's like, well, what about the failures? What can we learn from those? And seems like you bring some of that to the table.
Yeah, and I think it's a big opportunity to learn from some of those failures, and often those can all get down to different reasons. It might be about a lack of understanding. It could be about poor execution. So sometimes these things are not about understanding that, but
post analytics kind of stuff.
Correct. And we do that for a number of our clients who do look at those areas. And I think in particular, you're right. I think both the marketing organizations, CMOs, the insights organizations that support them are also focused on that.
They just want to sweep it under the rug rather than saying, whoa, this is a great lesson as a teacher. It's a great learning opportunity.
Yeah.
Switching gears, everyone knows you're great at consumer stuff. Is there a B2B business starting to grow? I mean, let's start with something easy. Companies like HP and Intuit that have both, let's say. Yeah, is it getting more sophisticated? And you think you guys is it gonna be a big chunk of your revenue 10 years from now?
We think it's a big opportunity. Actually, and B2B is one of our
that was my gut feel.
Yeah, big focus priority areas. I mean, if you've seen the growth of some of the some of the largest companies in the world, it's based on B2B transactions, whether that be in technology, whether that be in telco, financial services. Getting input on B2B, for example, getting the voice of whoever the customer is challenging, because it's one thing to speak to consumers and understand what they say and what they do. But for example, if you're an investment bank and you want to speak to high net worth individuals, or you're a technology company, you want to speak to CIOs, a CIO is not going to give up his time to speak to you as much as, say, as an average consumer would be. So getting the insights to be able to drive some of that is a more complex process. But there's some very good techniques going forward that we use, and we do see B2B as a big opportunity in a number of those sectors, particularly here in the US. I think the B2B market is more sophisticated here in the US than anywhere else in the world.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the spend on the line, it's like,
Correct.
Guys, you need more exactitude here about why and what you're doing. It's like,
correct.
And they're all listening to, we need more SDRs, we need more lead gen guys. I'm like, that's not going to cut it anymore. You need to step it up. And I spend a lot of time with CEOs in boardrooms and giving advice and guidance. So if I brought you on the next couple ones, what would you tell the big dog American or global, let's just call them multinational CEOs of the consumer brands? What would you tell them is like, hey, this is what you should be thinking about and worrying about over the next 5 years? Or I'll take the next year or so.
Yeah. I mean, there's a couple of things that we would say this, obviously, because this is the business we're in, but and we have some quite strong evidence that supports that. Number one is that
evidence is good.
Yeah, is that in times of uncertainty, which we're going through now at the moment, and sometimes times of real change, or let's call it recessions, like we saw in 2008, where we have again very strong empirical data that came out of it, and on COVID, is a number of businesses were sort of in their ability to sort of cut costs, reel back from investing in their brands. And what we know is that strong brands, and no matter where you are, whether you're a consumer business, whether you're a B2B business, whatever you are, strong brands make a huge difference. And a couple of things is if you disinvest from them, eventually at some point that's going to start to hurt that brand, whether that be on however it's advertising or whatever. Mm-hmm. And the cost to get your brand back to where it is much higher than if you constantly invest in that brand. So my advice would be to CEOs of particular big branded of big brands and strong brands is continue to invest in your brand. And in fact, if you continue to invest in your brand, it is a much better ROI than disinvesting and then reinvesting back in a year's time or 2 years' time
like
when you think it's good. Correct.
Up and down, right.
And the return on the investment on that is very strong for you as well. So that'll be one of the key areas. And then the other thing we would say, and again we would say this, is that I think understanding how people, however your consumer or your customer base is feeling about the current situation, I think is an important indicator of what goes on. I mean, we saw that, I think, but again, the financial crisis, we saw it very strongly through COVID, and sort of really understanding how any sort of, let's call it, consumer behavior shifts, and how consumer behavior might shift over time, we think is very important. I think gives you the ultimately understanding of the people who are buying your products and services is critical.
Yep. Monitor the shifts, stay close. You see that a lot in digital. Whole populations will just move, not so much in CPG, but they do.
Correct. Okay. And there's underlying, because the interesting thing as well is that there are big underlying trends which are taking place. At one point you've got, let's call it, the current uncertainty being created in the marketplace, whether it be through tariffs or whatever it might be at the moment. But you've got these big underlying trends that are going on, depending on your category. But the way consumers are using technology, the way people are moving between different demographics, and the way you sort of market to those demographics. These are long-term trends which are continue to happen no matter what. So one of the things is to make sure that you keep your eye on both of those more fundamental long-term trends, while at the same time you understand some of the short-term movements that are taking place at the moment.
And that's part of their problem. So we're back in the boardroom now. This is a group of 10 public CEOs. It's all short-term.
Correct. And they responding to the marketplace. They're responding to their stakeholders and to their investors. But at the end of the day, great companies, I really believe this. I think great companies are very good at balancing those two things, making sure they've got to focus on the long term, understanding fundamental consumer or customer shifts, while being able to respond to some of the short term impacts that are coming their way. Yeah,
the short term, I got to work on that, because it's usually like, oh gosh, things aren't well. Let's fire the CMO. Short lifespan of CMOs and chief innovation officers, and even CEOs now.
Yeah.
It's like, anyway, it depends what country you're in. Some of them have a longer term perspective. That's true. And some like you, owned by private equity, have the luxury to work more long term. So it seems like your transformation has been going well. How about you? What kind of reboots have you been through in your long storied career? I know you've been with the group for a long time, but
I have been. I think there's a couple things. One is actually, you just mentioned it, I think, which is probably the most recent one, which has been the change of ownership structure, moving from a public ownership structure to private. My personal experience, and I think I speak on behalf of most of the people in Kantar, would be a very positive one. Partly to the point you made, which has been let's call it the more longer term perspective. And then the one thing I would say, and again, I can't speak for all private equity businesses, but I can certainly speak for Bain Capital, is they are very, very invested in the business and in the detail of the business, much more so than actually often big public corporates are. Not that they're not invested, but their desire to understand what are the drivers of the business, actually operationally what happens, and how does that result in certain outcomes, has been, I think, an eye-opener for me, just in terms of the real interest in much more of the day-to-day operations of the business. So we've done a lot of work in our business of really re-engineering our product development process.
By the way, I love that,
commercial excellence process.
Yeah, hold your thought. Don't forget where you were. But I love that because that is the difference of what we just said. A public company, he's worried about the quarter. Private equity, they're trying to extract value. They're on your side. It's like, how do we make this more valuable?
Great.
Well, part of that's growth, but part of it is actually just being more valuable, the valuation. So, yeah. Sorry.
Completely. No, it's completely right. And in that role, the operating partners, the people within the business are much more in the business, and that comes with the pros and cons. But generally, it's been a positive experience. And as I say, they're interested in the operational aspects of the business, how that operational aspect creates and leverages and releases value for the business. So we've done extensive work around, sort of re-engineering our product and offer development process. We've done an enormous amount of work around tidying up our portfolio. We spoke about the sale of Kantar Media. We've also sold off our public policy business. We sold off our sort of healthcare specialist business, but really getting focused on core business. We've done a lot of work around sort of what we call commercial excellence and go-to-market. How do you really win in your go-to-market strategy? And I think those have benefited the business greatly. So that, I think, as a leader of the business, has been a very interesting reboot and transformation, I think, for myself and for the other senior execs in Kantar, going through that process, but also in some ways working with a partner who's very vested ultimately in the success of the business as well.
Nice. Thanks, Wayne. Appreciate you sharing today. It's a great story.
Thanks very much. Yeah. No, it's been great.
Reboot in progress.
Thanks very much, Dean.
Yeah, you've been listening to Wayne Levings on the Reboot Chronicles. This is Dean Tobias. Please listen, watch, subscribe wherever you get podcasts or at rebootchronicles.com.